Hey guys, it's Thomas here with Technovision, and welcome back to some more Spigot plugin development tutorials. Now in this episode, we're going to be covering custom inventories, also known as GUIs or screens, and we're going to be making in this episode just a simple select screen that will allow you to select an accept button or a deny button, and you can sort of use this however you'd like, but this is just an example to get you comfortable with how to make your own inventories. So first thing you want to do is in our main package here, we have a fresh plugin here, by the way, just with nothing more than the onEnable and onDisable method and the plugin.yml. And we want to create a new package, and we want to name this Inventories. And this is going to store all of our inventories that we make throughout our plugin, but you can name it if you'd like GUIs. You could also name it screens, whatever helps you understand what you're making the most. And inside of here, we're going to create a new class. And this is going to be the class for our actual inventory, and I'm going to name this selection screen because that is what it's going to be. All right, add a repository. Now we want to make sure that this implements inventory holder. That will make sure that this will actually act as an inventory. So implements inventory holder. There we go. And we want to make sure we implement the one very important method, which is get inventory. All right, so once we have that method, what we can do is we can create a public constructor. So public selection screen, and what we want to do is actually get or create an inventory so we can pass it into this this method here. So we can just create a private inventory invent. I'm just going to name it INV for short for inventory, and we want to instantiate this inventory in our actual class here, and then we'll pass it into this method. So to make an inventory, what you want to do is set your inventory variable equal to bucket.create inventory, and you're going to pass in a few things in here. First, the class that we're actually using right now, so this, and then you want to pass in the size of the inventory. So unlike Forge modding, you can't really make your own custom inventories per se because it is limited to vanilla Minecraft. So you have to choose any number between 9 and 54. 54 is the max number, and the numbers also have to be divisible by 9. So you cannot put like 5 here. That would not work. At least I've never tried it, but I wouldn't. There's really no reason to. You'd have to put 9 or 18 or 27. So all increments of 9. And that's because each row, like each increment of 9 that you put here will be a new row in your inventory. So 9 would have 1 row of inventory space. 18 would have 2 rows because that's 18 slots. 27 would have 3, and so on, all the way up to 54, which is the max. So I'm going to set this to 9 because I want it to just be 1 row. So 9 total slots, and I'm going to make sure we know here that 54 is the max size. And then the last thing we need to pass in is the name. So this is going to be the name that shows up in the top left corner of your actual inventory. So I'm going to name this selection screen, and this just passes in a string. And add a semicolon, of course. So our inventory is actually done. This inventory works, but it doesn't have anything in it, and there's nothing special about it. So we're gonna customize it a bit right now. So first we should make sure that our get inventory method returns our inventory. There we go. So it's getting that inventory that we just created. Now, what I wanna do is make a new class down here. Not a class, excuse me, a method. Let's just make it private. So private void, and we're gonna name this init. And this method is going to actually initialize all of the objects inside of our inventory, just so it's all neatly in one method. Oh, there we go. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to have, since this is like a selection screen just for example purposes, I want half of the inventory to be like a green stained glass pane, and then I want the other half, the right side, to be red stained glass pane. And then you can like choose accept or deny, and then maybe we can have like a book in the middle to for decoration or whatever you want to do here. It's up to you. So to do that, what we need is to create items. So you can create an item, again, just like I've shown in my other tutorials, with item stack. Item is equal to new item stack, and you can pass in the material. So like material dots like lime underscore stained glass pane. That would be a green stained glass pane, and then like the number, so 1 item. That's how you make like a regular item, but we don't just want like a glass pane in there. We want it to have a custom like name and some like lore so that it actually looks how we want it to. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna hold off on this method here. I'm going to first make a method that will allow us to create really efficiently custom items for our inventory. So let's just call this private, I guess, because we're not going to use it outside of this class. Private item stack create item. And you don't have to do this. You can handle this in a util class if you'd like, by the way, or like an items class, but I'm just doing it here because we're not gonna really access these items anywhere else. And we wanna pass in like a string name maybe for this. This is just a utility method here. The material that you want your item to be, and then of course like a list of strings that will be the lore for the object. And then what we can do, if we just import this class here, is we can just have a item stack item that equals a new item stack, and we can pass in the material and then 1 because we always want it to be just one item, unless of course you don't want it to be, in which case you could add like an amount variable up here. I don't know why I put some curly braces there. All right, so that's the actual item. We have an item with the material, but what we want to do is change the name and the lore. So we want to get the item meta, name that meta is equal to item.get item meta, and we can import item meta. And we want to take that meta and we want to first set the display name to our custom name, so name, because that's what we're passing in right here. And then we also want to set the meta.setLore to our custom lore. So we're using these parameters that we're going to pass in later on. And then of course we need to make sure that we set the item meta. So item.setItemMeta meta, semicolon, and we can return the item so that we can actually use it, of course. All right, so now we have, well, we don't have any items yet, but we have a way to really easily make custom items with a name and some lore. So we can use this method now in our init method here. So what I want to do, because I want to again do lime stained glass panes on one side and red on the other side, I'm just going to have a for loop through half of the slots and just do the same thing over and over again. So let's make an item stack item, and I want this to first I'm going to add green stained glass panes to the left like half of the inventory. Hopefully I'll have like an image on screen so you can kind of see, but so we're gonna loop through I equals 0, and then we're gonna loop all the way up until 4, and we're gonna increment by 1. So what this is doing is, well, what we're gonna use it for is we're gonna loop through all the slots from 0 all the way up to 4, and it's gonna fill it in with whatever we choose. Now, again, just like an array or like, you know, many other things in Java, these actual inventories, their first slot is actually 0 and not 1, so keep that in mind. So for all the slots between 0 and 4, so the first 4 slots essentially, what we're going to do is create a new item, and we're going to use our new method that we just created here, create item, and we're going to pass in a name. So for this one, I'm going to have this be the accept side, so it's going to be like the accept panel, and I'm going to use, let me get this little thingy here. I never remember the name of this this character, but it's the color code character, and I'm gonna make this green, so at A, and then I want it to be bold as well, so at L, and then this is gonna be accept. So that's the name. I want the material to be material.lime underscore stained glass pane. And then I want the lore to be, it has to be a list, but since we're only going to use one line of lore in this one, I'm just going to do collections.singleton list. And we can, singleton list. And we can just pass in like one line. So I can make it gray colored and then put accepts the request. Okay, so let's go over this right now. So we're using this custom method that we just made to create items to create a new item with the name accept. It's gonna say accept on the top. It's gonna be green and bold. It's a lime stained glass pane, and it's gonna have some lore right here as we said. And again, you can use a list if you want, a list of strings, but because it's only one line, I'm just gonna use a singleton list because it's easier, but keep that in mind. And then we're going to actually add this item to our inventory. So to add an item to the inventory, there's two things you can do. One way is to do inventory add item, and you can just throw in the item that we just made. Now, this is fine, but what this is gonna do every time it loops, since this is like pretty much the same item, is it's going to actually continue adding these items to like an existing stack. So what you're gonna find is instead of having these items fill up the first 4 slots, it's actually gonna fill up the first slot, and it's just gonna have a stack of 4, because it's gonna keep adding the item to an existing stack. If you want these items to actually inhabit their own slots, even if they're the same item, what you have to use instead, is inventory.setItem. And you want to set it, what set item does is it allows you to specify a specific slot to set an item in. So you could pass in like, 3, and then my item. That would make sure this item is always placed in slot 3. So what we're gonna do is always check. Well, there's 2 ways we could do this. We have the variable I here in our for loop, so we could just pass an I, and it would just keep adding to the next available slot. But if you didn't have a for loop per se in this case, you could do inventory dot first empty, and that would get the next available space that doesn't have an item in it. So either of those work fine. I'm gonna pass an I because we have it right there. So yeah, so this is going to loop through the first 4 slots, create this custom item here. I guess we technically could create this item up here if we wanted to save some memory usage, but it doesn't really matter. This is a tutorial, so do what you'd like, but that's generally how you do it. Now in the center, I want there to be a book. So what I can do is I can create a new item. Well, let's make some comments here. So left, and then this is gonna be the center. So the center is going to be a new item, and it's going to be, again, we're going to use that same method here, create item, and I want this to say, let's get that color character here. Let's make it blue. I believe that's at B, and we want it to be bold as well. And we're just going to have this say like, make a selection, and let's make the material be a book. So we want this to be a book. And the lore, I want this to be a little bit more advanced lore, so we're actually gonna make a list of strings named lore, and this is gonna be a new array list. And we can just keep adding lines to this, so I can add like, let me get that color character again, make it gray, and we can just say like, please select either the accept, and then we can have a new line because I don't want it to be too long on one line here. Please select either the accept or deny button to make a selection. There we go. So we have some lore here, and we can pass it in to our create item method. So what this is doing, it's making a list of lore strings that just says, please select either the accept or deny button to make a selection. And then we're just passing it into our create item method here. And we have our custom name as well, and it's gonna be a book. And we can set this to the middle. Well, I mean, what we could do is we could just do inventory.setItem, inventory.firstEmpty, and then item. But you could also specify an exact slot if you wanted. Like I said, you could put like the next available one, I believe, would be 4. So yeah, we could do that. But I'm just gonna put inventory.firstEmpty, which again gets the next available slot in an inventory. And then finally, we want the right-hand side. And this is gonna be pretty much a carbon copy of what we have up here. So we can copy and paste this for loop, but we wanna loop through the right half of the inventory. So that would be from slot 5 to 9. Let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so there we go, perfect. So from slots 5 to 9, we're going to add a deny button. So I'm gonna change the name here to deny and make it red with color code C. And then we'll just have the lore say denies the request. And of course, we don't want a lime green glass pane because this is a deny button. So we're gonna put a red stained glass pane. Okay, file save all. So there we go. So our init method is done pretty much. Again, what this is doing is we're making an item. We keep instantiating it to these new custom items that we're making and setting them at specific slots. So really all you have to know here is that you can create items just like I've shown you in many tutorials in the past, and you can just do inventory.either add item, or you can set item to a specific slot. and you can mess around with that as you would like. So now that we have these items added to our inventory, we can do init, and we can just make sure that we call it inside of our constructor here to make sure that all this code actually gets run. So very important, make sure this is being called, or if you'd like, you can just run all of this inside of your constructor, up to you. So now we have our inventory pretty much done for the most part. It's not gonna do anything exciting. It's just gonna be an inventory full of custom items, but we will be working on that in a second. So before we do that, I wanna just add a command so we can actually open our inventory. So to do that, what we need to do is create a new package here called commands. And just like we've done before, I've made many videos on this, just name this whatever you'd like, tutorial commands in my case, and add a repository. And just like with every command class that we've done before, it needs to implement command executor. And we need to make sure that we implement that very important method on command. And again, I'm just gonna change these just so they're easier to see. Sender command, this should be label, this should be args. And just like we've done before, make sure this returns true. We wanna check if the sender is an instance of player, but we wanna actually check if it's not. So gotta add that exclamation mark for the negation. So if the sender is not a player, so if the sender is a console, then of course we want to return true, and we want to send the sender a message that just says only players can use this command. There we go. So now that we know that the sender is actually a player and not the console, we can get the player as an object by casting the sender into a player. And then what we want to do is, again, we want to create a custom command here to open our inventory. You could do this in multiple ways. It's all up to however you want to use your inventory. If you want to use it through a command, you could do it what I'm doing. You could also have like a certain event if you wanted, like I've covered in a previous video. You could have an event to open an inventory. But the way you do it, well, first let's make the command actually. So if command.getName.equals ignore case sender, or not sender, let's make the command selection. Or select, there we go. So you can do /select to open this inventory. And the way you actually open an inventory is first you have to make a instance of the class we made. So that custom inventory holder class you made, you wanna do selection screen. Let's just name it like GUI is equal to new selection screen. And what you wanna do with this GUI is actually have the player open it. And you can do that by doing player.openInventory. And you want to get that inventory holder and .get inventory. So again, what we're doing is in this specific command, this is how you open your inventories. And again, you can do this in an event if you'd like. It doesn't have to be a command, but you essentially make the class, the inventory holder class, instantiate it, and then get the inventory from that class and pass it into the open inventory method for the player. Pretty simple stuff. Hopefully you have the grasp of that. And then maybe we can send a message real quick. Player.sendMessage. Let's have it be chatcolor.aqua maybe, and we can just have it say like, please make a selection. There we go. Just to let the user know, I guess. And yeah, so there we go. It returns true. So we have our command here. We do need to make sure that this command is registered. So come to your main class. And again, very important, just like always, we have to do get command, pass in the command, which I believe is select, right? Yeah, select. And then we need to set the executor to our class. So new tutorial commands class. That's the class that holds all of our commands. Again, hopefully you know all of this from the commands video. You should be very comfortable with that by now. And then last thing we need to do is add it to our plugin.yml. So again, every command that you add does have to be in your plugin.yml, very important. So what we can do is type commands, and the name of the command, so select. And then we can just add like a description. We can set like opens the selection screen. And then we can have like a usage, which would just be /command. All right, so now we've actually added our command to the game. And when we run this command, this /select command, it will actually open our custom inventory. So let's run the game right now. We can build artifacts to build our plugin, and I will run the server right now, and let's see you in the game. All right, so we're inside of the game now, and if we run the command that we made, which is /select, there we go. It opens our custom inventory. You can see it ran the command there to send that message that says, please make a selection. And we've got our custom inventory. It's got the selection screen name. It's got 9 slots, just like we set. And of course, our custom items are set. First 4 slots, we've got the accept button. The last 4 slots have the deny button, and we have that special like centerpiece that we set. And you can see all of the names and lore and coloring. It's all perfect. So it's working great. But one thing you'll notice right away is that, oh, you can take things out of the inventory, which is obviously very problematic. We probably don't want our players just stealing the items from the inventory. You can see you can just like open an infinite amount and just like steal the items from them. And you'll also notice obviously that clicking these buttons doesn't actually do anything. There's nothing special. They're literally just renamed items. So what we need to do is actually go back into IntelliJ and create some events so that we can change that. So let's go back and do that right now. All right, so we're actually going to use a event, specifically the inventory click event, in order to add some custom stuff to our inventory and prevent people from taking items out of it. And again, I'm assuming that you've already watched the events video in this series and that you're comfortable with that. So definitely watch that if you're not. But what we can do is create a new package called events, and we can create a new class in here just called whatever you want, but I'm going to call it inventory events because it's going to house all of the events that have to do with our custom inventory. And we want to make sure that this first implements listener because it is an event class, so it's going to have a listener so that the events actually run. And just like we've covered in the past, every method you make has to have that event handler tag. There we go. And we're just going to make this a public void, let's name it onClick, and this is going to pass in the inventory click event, and we're just going to name this E, so it's short. So this event is going to fire every single time your inventory is clicked, or really any inventory is clicked actually. So that includes like a chest or any vanilla inventory, including the player's inventory, I believe. So what we first want to do to check, we have to check a few things just to make sure we're not always running this event here. So first thing we want to do is check if e.getClickedInventory, this will get the inventory that you clicked on in this event. We want to make sure that this is not null. So if it's equal to null, then we want to just return. And again, returning in this case just completely shuts down the event. It just like stops running the rest of the code. So if the inventory is null, if it doesn't exist, it'll just return. And this is going to stop errors from happening when you click on like empty space outside of your inventory. Next, we want to make sure that we're actually using our custom inventory because we don't want this to run for every vanilla inventory. So to do that, we can do if e.getClickedInventory .getHolder, very important. We want the holder here. We want to check if that's an instance of our selection screen. And if that's the case, then we'll run the rest of the code. If not, then we want to just disregard everything. So the reason we're checking the holder and not the clicked inventory with our custom class here is because if you notice in our selection screen class that we made, it actually implements inventory holder, not inventory. So it's just a class that holds an inventory. So that's why we need to actually compare the holder. That's what we're doing here. So if we are sure that the inventory is our custom one, then we immediately want to cancel the event. And we can do that with e.setCanceled and set that to true. And the reason we want to do that is because this will prevent players from taking items out of the inventory. If you remember from the events video that I did in this series, you'll know that canceling an event pretty much shuts down the vanilla intentions of what's supposed to happen. So like, I guess that's not the best way to explain it, but when you cancel an event, it pretty much prevents anything related to that event from happening. So like if you were to cancel the block break event, then you would no longer be able to break a block. So in this case, by canceling the inventory click event, we're preventing the user from moving and picking up and interacting with, in a vanilla way at least, with items in an inventory. So if you want to stop your players from modifying your custom inventory, do e.setCanceled is equal to true, or it's set to true. And we can grab the player real quick by just doing player is equal to, and inventory click event, well, let's import player here. Inventory click event, if you'll notice, does not actually come with get player. It actually only comes with get who clicked, which is a human entity, not a player. So what we need to do is just cast that to a player real quick. There we go. So we have the player now, and so there's a few things I want to do with this. Well, I want to mention that you can actually leave it here. This will work totally fine. This will just allow you to have like a boring inventory that just you can't take anything out of. But if you want to add custom functionalities to your buttons, like if you want, in my case, I want the lime green stained glass panes to like say like, oh, you selected the accept button, and then if you click the red ones, I want it to say, oh, you denied the request. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So if you want to do that, first you want to make sure that there actually is an item that the person is clicking on. You can do that with e.get current item, and if it's equal to null, just return true, or return rather. So just like we did up here, we want to make sure that if you click on a spot in the inventory and there's nothing in there, if there's no item, we want it to return, because we're going to be working with items, and if we don't return here, it's going to throw a bunch of errors. So that's pretty important. So now that we know that the item is actually true, or that it is actually a valid item, what we can do is, well, there's multiple ways you can check. You can check if you're in a specific slot. So you could do like if e.get slot, which gets the slot number is equal to like 4. That would be slot number 4, except I believe it would be slot number 3 because they start at 0. So like you could get a slot that way. But what I'm gonna do is check if, there we go. I want to check if e.getCurrentItem.getType, so the material, is equal to material.lime stained glass pane. So if the button that the player clicks on, if the item I mean that they click on is a lime stained glass pane, then what we're gonna do is send them a message. So player.sendMessage, we can do chatColor.green, and we can just say you have selected the accept button. And then we want to just close the inventory because they have selected the accept button. So player.close inventory. And this will open whatever inventory they have at the current moment open. So again, I want to stress here that this is just an example. So instead of just sending a message here, we're not doing anything really exciting. You could do all sorts of stuff. You could have this specific lime stained glass pane, or specific slot if you're doing it that way. You could have it run a command. You could have it I don't know, start all sorts of stuff. You could, if you have like hooks to essentials or something, or vault, you could like give the player cash, whatever you want. So hopefully this is just like sort of getting you used to how to use these inventories, but just know, obviously you can use this for whatever you'd like. So what about if it's not a lime stained glass pane? So we want to do an else if. Now I want to get the book. I want the book to do something interesting. So there's a couple ways we could do that. We could do the same thing we did here, where we check if the item you clicked on is a book, but I want to show you many examples. So let's do if e.getSlot is equal to 4, because the book is always going to be in the 4th slot in the center of the inventory in our case that we set. So if you click on the center slot, then we can do player.sendMessage. Let's make this the color like aqua again, I guess, and we can have it say, please make a selection ... I don't have all day. So just like a funny message, and we don't want this to close the inventory. We just want it to remind the player to make a selection. So and then of course we can make one final check, else if e.getCurrentItem.getType is equal to material.red stained glass pane. So if you're clicking on a red glass pane, then what you can do is let's just copy this code here. We want to close the inventory again and just send a message that says you have selected the deny button. And instead of chat color green, we can do chat color red. All right, so this is pretty much done. So let's run through this one more time. So what we've got going on here is essentially we're checking to make sure that the inventory actually exists. If it does, it moves on. If the inventory is our custom inventory that we made, then it's going to cancel the event and make sure that the player can't move any of the items in the actual inventory. And then it's going to check that there's an item that has been selected. And what I mean by that is the slot you clicked on has an item. If it does, then what it's going to do is check what type of item it is. If it's a lime stained glass pane item, then it's going to run a little message here. If it's in slot 4, it's going to run a message. And if it's a red stained glass pane, it's going to run another message. And again, super boring here. I'm just sending messages, but you can do whatever you'd like here. And you can keep checking. You can check slots. There's so much stuff you can do with this event. You can check the action, like you can check if they were dragging. You can check if it's a left click, if it's a right click. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do that? We can make this only occur for left clicks. So we could do if e.gets, what is it? Gets, it wasn't get, is right click, is left click. So if the event was a right click, then we can run this. So just some examples for you. Now this will only run if we left clicked on the inventory. There's all sorts of stuff you can do, but I'm gonna leave that up for you to check out. And now we of course have to actually make sure that we register this event. So we can go to our main class here, and just like we've always done in the previous videos, we can do get server .get plugin manager .register events, and we can pass in our event class. So new, I believe we called it inventory events, and our main plugin class, so this. And that will make sure that this event is actually registered. So now we can actually file, save all, build artifacts, build, and I will see you in the game to test this out. All right, so we're back inside of the server, and what we can do is do /select again. And you'll notice if we right click, nothing is happening just like we set, and you can actually take the items out of the inventory. If we hit the book, we can no longer take it out as intended, and it does say just what we set. Please make a selection of all day. If we hit the accept button, there we go, you have selected the accept button. And same thing for the deny button, you have selected the deny button. And this works for pretty much all of them. So yeah, there you go. Everything is working as intended, and we now have a custom GUI inventory for our plugin. And there's so many amazing things you can do with this to make your plugin seem a little bit more professional, a little bit more advanced than just, basic commands. So definitely play around with this, add whatever you like, and yeah, hopefully you learned a lot, and I will see you in the next episode.